Welcome to the Fulfillment Game. Here we have meaningful conversations with extraordinary professionals exploring life, work, and their personal wisdom in a context grounded in spirituality and contribution. I'm your host, Amit Sood. Today we have Christopher Schuring. Chris is a published author. He's written about his life, he's written about leadership, he's written about the role of God in pruning our journeys through challenges and shaping who we become. But what makes this conversation deeply interesting is the life that it has been for Chris. Chris saw his life through addictions, through challenges that a life on the street, living as a homeless person, can involve. Then he saw his life transform from a blue collar logger to one who is now at the cutting edge of technology and AI, a leading businessman in this universe of energy. Apart from this, Christopher is also a pastor. So you can see that this life that Chris has lived has not left many experiences um, unlived. He's lived through some of the greatest challenges of a life of addiction through drugs. He's seen himself transform through hard work and made a deep and present felt connection with God. And he now has written about how life is pruned by God. He shapes us with great amount of grace, and this is what he shares in today's conversation. He shares with some remarkable clarity of how to live a life that focuses on possibilities and opportunities rather than challenges, even when you're dealing with difficulties. And it's not coming from somebody who is actually just preaching on this topic, but somebody who's actually lived a life focused on opportunities in all circumstances. I'm sure you'll take away something of great value if you listen to this. So, over to Chris.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to have a great conversation.
Thanks, Chris. Looking forward to it as well. So, Chris, tell us your story. How has God pruned this vine?
Well, it's a long and sordid tale. It starts in Guatemala as a young boy. uh, my journey has been all over the place for one basic reason is I love adventure and I love meeting new people and having experiences. But in that, there are times when there is trials and tribulations.
Hmm.
And because of those trials and tribulations, we get pruned. Well, later in life, we start to realize that when you prune the roses out front, they tend to bloom more.
Hmm.
When you prune the fruit trees accordingly, they tend to produce more fruit. And so I look back at all the pruning that's taken place in my life, whether it's the auto accidents I've been in, or the fact that I'm 40 plus years clean and sober, or the
Hmm.
fact that I spent 2 years homeless. I started out in this world working in a slaughterhouse. And the next job I had after that, I was a lumberjack. So in the Sierra Nevadas, California,
Hmm.
I worked in the timber industry. And every job and every experience I've had have formed who I am today because of those pruning events in my life that when they happen can be painful,
Hmm.
it can be troubling, but when you look at them as an experience to become better,
Hmm.
you get better. And so my psyche and my psychology around being pruned is a psychology of acceptance at this point.
Chris, take us through. There were so many books in what you just shared.
Right.
This is not just chapters of life. These are humongous transformations and transitions in life. Slow us
Yeah.
down. Tell us a little bit about
Yeah.
how this journey has been, and how did
Right.
it connect you with make it made you aware of that there is a hand pruning this vine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I actually got involved in my spirituality when I was 14. I turned 65 this past November.
Mm,
And it was a seeking of trying to be connected with a bigger purpose back when I was 14. Now, that also gave me a perspective that probably wasn't all that good. So I walked away from my spirituality for about probably close to 8 years. But I always felt that tugging at my heart that there was something bigger and a bigger purpose for what I was trying to accomplish. And in a lot of cases, I didn't know what I was trying to accomplish. I accepted the next opportunity as it was presented to me. And so I started going to church when I was 14, walked away for about 8 years, went back to church. I've been married now for 44 years and clean and sober, like I said, for 40 years,
mm,
and spent a lot of time in personal growth. And up until about 2 years ago, I was actually an associate pastor at a church.
mm,
And now I'm becoming a chaplain at the current church that I go to.
mm,
But in my world travels, I've been around the world and done a lot of different things and met a lot of different people for a lot of different reasons. What that has given me is a good perspective on
mm,
humans and the acceptance of people where they're at, right? Which allows me to accept people and to then be able to grow in a relationship so that no matter where they're at, we can all come out the other side in a better place. And so my journey on a spiritual basis has been all over the place. And I've read. Uh, I was just talking with somebody earlier today. I haven't read much in the Quran,
mm,
but I've read a lot of other religious texts, Tao and Buddhism and Confucianism and those types of things,
mm,
so that I get a world perspective
mm,
of where people are coming from. I spent time in India. The people I was with in India were Hindu gurus,
mm,
and I tried to understand their motivations and how they did things and how their worldview, so that I could use that as a perspective on how I would approach people in the future.
mm. And so when you look at these points of views, spirituality as a point of view, how would you best define spirituality? What is your version of definition of spirituality?
Right. Well, I'm definitely an evangelical Christian,
Mm,
and that means a lot. But spirituality to me basically boils down to what is your inner voice that guides you? What is guiding you? Who do you, in the dark times and quiet times, who do you find solace in? Who do you talk to?
mm,
And if you don't have some sense of spirituality, the bigger being in the universe, if you will, the creator, and we don't need to get into who we believe creators are and those kinds of things, but if you don't have that belief, then I believe you don't have hope.
mm,
And that spirituality gives me hope, gives me guidance. It gives me a reference point to say there is something bigger than me, so
mm,
therefore there's bigger things I can do.
mm. So the young Chris didn't have spirituality to begin with, am I right?
I wouldn't have called it that, and I
Mm,
probably didn't at that time. I was more seeking belonging and acceptance,
mm,
um, and those kinds of things. And as I grew older, I realized that was spirituality was at the center of it. But
mm,
as a youth, it was more about where do I belong, right? So like when I was a lumberjack, there was a group of people I thought I belonged to. They weren't the best people on the planet, uh, but they were who I was with at the time. But it gave me some insights into a different side of the world, a dark side that I could have gone to if I wanted to. But something was always pulling at me to say, that's not where you're supposed to be going.
mm,
And so I think spirituality is can be defined differently for a lot of different people. But for me, it's that beacon of hope, that beacon of camaraderie that I maybe can't find anywhere else.
Hmm. And when you talk about pruning,
Hmm.
of course, your life is a perfect example. Through being a lumberjack, practically the definition of blue collared work to
Yeah.
the white collar cutting edge technology. And as we were just talking, none of this through a college degree, although now universities are granting you honorary PhDs.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has
Which is
been
kind of humorous. I think it's humorous, but it's fun. Yeah.
well, this has been quite a journey. But so this pruning, say
Right.
something more about, take us into the deeper end of what pruning is and how do people experience this? What does it take for a heart to draw wisdom that you want to
Right.
share through the book, through
Right.
the mind that you speak that you've
Well,
written? Mm,
I think in most cases, pruning could be seen in basically two different ways. I mean, there's variances in everything, but two different ways. One is through pruning, let's say when I was homeless, right? When I became homeless, I can take that experience and I can turn it into bitterness. I can turn it into rage. I can turn it into anger. I can turn it into solitude, isolation. I can turn it into a lot of things. But because I felt I was being pruned, even at that time,
How old were you?
and I was 20 at the time, and you know, I can look at those things and maybe not at the time it was happening, but I accept that pruning because it made me a better person. And
Mm,
I didn't foster any anger or resentment because I felt through my seeking of spiritual guidance and trying to be a better person that being anger centered and motivated through resentment and those kind of things wasn't going to serve any purpose. All it was going to do is drive me further into the darkness. And I had a little vision of some of the darkness in my youth. And from one perspective, the darkness can be fun, right? It can be exciting and adrenaline and all those other kinds of things. But when you take a step back from it, you can see how destructive it can be
mm,
and how isolating it can be. And so over the years, and this isn't something that I woke up one day and all of a sudden I had this epiphany. It was something over time. I realized that all the pruning that takes place in my life, whether it's the motorcycle accidents I've been in, or the car accidents I've been in, or the drugs that I've been involved with, or the business failures I've had, or the personal injuries, or the threats on my life, whatever, all these things give me the opportunity to have a gracious and compassionate spirit towards others that may go through the same thing. And I've had I've had some business failures and things where people look at me and go, "Well, why didn't you just go take all those people out? Why didn't you just lose your mind and go take those people out?" And certainly there's a part of me that would say, "Yeah, maybe." But there's a bigger part of me that says, life is a journey. It's a marathon. And doing those other things just takes you back to the darkness. And I was meant to be in the light. So let's just move on from that, use it as a growth perspective, understanding that it was painful so you don't do it again. But I think on that path of being pruned, whether I actually physically bled or whether I lost all my personal possessions, which those things have all happened. Whether I was rushed to the hospital after an ocean rescue, yeah, all those things have happened. But I really find solace in the fact that I don't hold any resentment for any of that. I don't hold any grief. I don't have any regret because today, right now, in this conversation with you as a new friend, talking about these kinds of things, I'm happy. I'm content. Uh, there's, I could sit on my couch for the rest of my life and chill out and relax and not have to push the envelope any longer if I wanted to. I don't want to because it keeps my brain moving. But I could use all these experiences to say, okay, I'm done. But experiences are continually placed before me, like this conversation and so forth. And really, in it, I don't want it to sound self-serving, but I believe that some of the people who might listen to this conversation and other conversations that I've had will take away from it their own experience, which will make them a happier, more faith-based person.
And when you use the word pruning for events which are hugely traumatic, for example, accidents, journey through drugs, uh, life threats, time on street,
Yeah,
being homeless. You use pruning as a as a grace, as something that somebody very carefully crafts for you, organizes for you to have that experience.
correct, correct. Because as the Christian scriptures speak of, the vine dresser is Jesus Christ.
Mm,
And Jesus isn't going to just haphazardly chop away at the bush.
mm,
He's going to take time and care and thoughtfulness to do that pruning. Sometimes that pruning gets rid of dead wood and you won't feel it. Other times, a live branch needs to be cut. But the person who's in charge of that pruning, the vine dresser, is doing it out of compassion and love, not out of anger or not out of some misguided concept of reduction. It's
mm,
about growth. And in the scriptures, it says there will be trials and tribulation. There's nothing in there that says every day is going to be rosy. There
mm,
will be trials and tribulation. And the sooner we can accept that and we can work through it, the happier we'll be. So we don't have those regrets.
mm. So this journey is one of one that is organized for us as if through a series of lessons or transformations or events that will transform us. It's easy to take that view in the context of faith and belief,
Right,
and I've
right.
to respect it deeply. I've written about it, etc. But I'm curious to have your point of view on how would you talk to a person who hasn't yet found religion or faith or a
Right,
scripture, and
right,
to them events of life appear random, and
right,
yet there are some clear benefits, clear gifts that even
right,
the most troublesome events appear to give us, particularly in the spiritual light. Uh,
right.
you know, say
So,
something about this. Yeah.
yeah, so, it's not always easy to have conversations with people you don't know,
Mm,
whether that's a random stranger or your next door neighbor, right? And we tend to live in a very disconnected world that is highly connected. So we think we know people because they're in our social network, but we really don't know people. So my only advice and how I approach it is number one, don't be judgmental. And for me, that's an easier road than some because of my life experiences. I know what it's like to be in these other situations. And the other is, and this is a religion problem, and a religion problem tends to hit people over the head with their belief system,
mm,
whether it's Christianity or Judaism or Hinduism or whatever. It's either their way or the highway,
mm,
and they tend to um, beat people over the head with it. How I approach it is, look, we're two people on the same planet. What you believe is between you and God. I'm here to help answer questions if I can, but I'm not here to transition you into some huge new belief system that's going to alter everything, unless you so choose to, right? Um, like my wife and I will say sometimes, is at the end of the day, it's between you and God, not between me and you. And do we really know, as humans, mortal people on this planet, no matter what, how deep our faith is, do we really know at the end of the day that all these other factions of goodwill and compassion are right or wrong? Do we really? So I really like to just have conversations that are easy. I try to be humble, not always easy, I have to admit, but I try to be humble, try to have easy conversations, and I don't force anything on anybody
Mm.
because that just creates conflict and that creates people having a standoff type of attitude. So like when I meet people in public, if you meet my gays in public,
Mm.
I'm going to say, "How you doing?" And they'll say something else, and they generally 99% of the time will say, "Well, how are you doing?" I'll
Mm.
say, "I'm blessed and highly favored."
Mm.
Hey, what do you mean? Says I'm blessed and highly favored. That means that through Jesus Christ, I've found favor.
Mm.
80% of the time people say, well, I wish I could be that too. I say, well, you are. You're already blessed and highly favored. You just need to accept it.
Mm. And
Sometimes
yet,
we're not accepting of grace. Grace is unmerited favor. And we think, well, it's unmerited, so therefore I don't deserve it. So therefore, why should I accept it?
mm.
That's not the point. When it's unmerited favor, you should accept it.
Mm. Acceptance of grace. I love the idea of, um, forgiveness as uh, the book on miracles, course on miracles talks about.
Yep. Yep.
And it introduces this new idea of uh, atonement to me, which was willingness to accept that you're forgiven. We are forgiven, but
And that's hard for people to accept, right?
yeah, yeah. So
And it's
since
hard to accept it, but it's also hard to provide it.
right,
I
hmm,
mean, I can point to a lot of instances in my life where people would say, "Why would you forgive that person?" I've forgiven everybody,
hmm,
not for their sake necessarily,
hmm,
but for my own sake, for my well-being, for my spiritual strength.
hmm,
I need to forgive, right? And believe me, there's some things that in my world that people say, "Why did you forgive that person?"
hmm,
I have to.
yeah,
It's not for them because some of the people I've forgiven, they'll never know. I haven't seen them in 40 years or whatever, so they'll never know. But
yeah,
I know.
yeah.
So,
And yet, the idea of acceptance of that you are favored. This idea is not just a question of standing in a thought or a belief. It is to make it your truth.
yep,
To let it move you, to transform you in some way. Say
right, right,
something more about so the fact that you have grace, that you are being pruned. You know,
right.
so okay, now I get it. I hear it from you. Okay, fine. I receive it as a thought. Now what?
Yeah,
So what
right.
is it? Is it a thought? What? How does one let this sink in and let it transform us? This idea of
Well, it's all through relationship and love.
mm,
And, it's not the gushy kind of love, like let's go out on a date kind of thing or whatever, right? It's the love of our fellow man, our fellow human. And you can be angry with somebody or disagree with them, but that doesn't mean you don't love them.
mm,
The old saying, hate the sin. not the center. And it's really about relationship because, like, as we are doing right now, we're building a relationship. Without the ability to build the relationship, whether it's one-on-one or 1 to 100, we can't show ourselves as the example of love and compassion and grace. If we stay in the house and we never go out and we don't build any relationships, it's a moot point.
Mm.
So it's really built through relationships, and relationships are hard. They're not always easy. But if we start on a one-on-one basis and build from there and build our own resiliency to relationships,
Mm.
I think that opens more doors and brings more grace than not. So, I mean, I did a stint for a while where I was a over-the-road truck driver.
Mm.
And as an over-the-road truck driver, I was, like a lot of things in my life, I was given the opportunity
Mm.
to train drivers, to be a mentor for
Mm.
new drivers. Part of my psyche is if somebody gives me an opportunity, I never say no. I
Mm.
always say, let me check it out. What does it mean to me? So I've had lots of opportunities in my life simply because I didn't say no. So I was a mentor for young drivers that are just getting their license and so forth, which on one hand is pretty scary to get in a truck and somebody's driving a 80,000 pound rig down the highway at 60 miles an hour with their hands on the steering wheel.
Mm.
But in that, I trained one guy who was a devout atheist. I trained another person who was a devout follower of Islam
Mm.
and did nothing but listen to the Quran on tape, on audio. And whenever the opportunity presented itself, he would get out and he had a piece of cardboard. He'd get out and pray and all those kinds of things. I had another person who was a devout Muslim, not Muslim, a Mormon.
Mm.
I had lots of different people from all over the place, from Utah, from Yemen, from other places, Somalia and places, who were drivers that I was training.
Mm.
But I didn't push them away through animosity or fear or rejection or non-acceptance. I gave them the grace for them to be who they were.
Mm.
The grace was returned back to me, and we had great relationships. I didn't try to convert them. They didn't try to convert me.
Mm.
But we had a great relationship because each one of those people I spent 4 to 6 weeks in front of a cab driving around the United States training them how to be a driver. So it's really those experiences that and my worldview of other things that allow me to have that compassion and grace. And I understand that I'm different than a lot of people,
Mm.
and I've been through a lot of things that are different. But these types of interviews help me to share that.
Mm.
And I wear everything on my sleeve. I'm completely transparent. This is who I am, no matter where you meet me, whether
Mm.
it's in the coffee shop or in church or on the street. This is who I am.
Yeah.
And that grace allows me to bring people closer to me,
Mm.
which allow me to build our relationship, which allows them to see who I am, and hopefully who I am brings them closer to their Savior.
Chris, what did it take for you to become this person? So I can see that there is unbelievable amount of great fortune in the life that this has been, although it's been filled with misfortunes. I can see that there have been tremendous amount of challenges that your early life particularly saw.
Right,
And yet there was something in the Constitution, as well as something that molded the Constitution. Of course, that's pruning that we have been speaking
right,
about.
right,
But something in the Constitution that makes you find opportunities when there even when they're hidden, and even when
right,
you don't see them right away, when there is um, great darkness
right.
from the traditional point of view, and yet
Yeah,
it's something that makes you get up and get going.
right,
Tell, share something about the mind that
right.
how it has been shaped
Right.
shaped, particularly in the early days when you were dealing with this?
Well, it might have been shaped with a few baseball bats or falling off of a horse or doing some other things, but it really comes from a belief that giving up was not an option.
Mhm.
I grew up in a Marine Corps military household. I'm the youngest of four. I was born in Guatemala.
Mhm.
Um, Early in my life, when I was like 9 or 10 months old, I had a kidney removed for tumors.
Mhm.
It could have taken my life. I had a lot of other instances while I was growing up that could have taken my life. But I was always instilled with the fact that giving up was not an option. But, and I attribute it to being the youngest of four. My parents were entrepreneurially minded. So was my older brothers. They were entrepreneurially minded, and that gave me the spirit of observation, if you will.
Mhm.
And in that observation, growing up, I was able to see opportunities that other people didn't see.
Mhm.
And there's a few different kinds of people in the world when it comes to opportunity. So if I were to present to you the opportunity to, we're going to go to Sri Lanka
Mhm.
and we're going to do a waste to energy plant and we're going to spend $1 billion and we're going to save Sri Lanka's energy grid. You up for that?
Mhm.
Okay, most people, there's a lot of people that say, well, wait a minute,
Mhm.
that's way above my pay grade.
Mhm.
It's way outside my comfort zone. I don't have the skill set. I don't have the training. So I'm not going to participate in that.
Mhm.
I, on the other hand, would say, when does the plane leave?
Mhm.
I'll learn it as we go. Let's go see what this is all about.
Mhm.
Other people would say, no, I just don't want to do that because I'm afraid of going to Sri Lanka. I'm afraid of travel, or there's a more deeply set personal reason why I don't want to get involved with a diverse culture or a new culture. And then there's others that just won't even hear the opportunity. They won't even. What do you mean? I have no idea what you're talking about.
Mhm.
I've always been the person when somebody in the neighborhood, and when we lived in the neighborhood, it was in the country. So my neighbor, when I say the neighborhood, this neighbor was a mile away. They said, "Hey, we'll pay you X amount of dollars to sweep our driveway." Now, the driveway was long. It
Mhm.
wasn't like a residential neighborhood driveway that you see today. It was 100 yards long, right, or whatever. Well, I looked at that and went, well, I can get out, I can do some things, I can make a few dollars. Sure, I'll sweep your driveway. Nobody else wanted to do it. Sure, I'll go do that.
Mhm.
When I went to work at the slaughterhouse, they said, "You want to come work at the slaughterhouse?" And we had lived on a ranch, so we were watching animals be processed on the ranch, and they were being further processed at the meat market that I went to work for.
Mhm.
So I went, I'll just go see how the professionals do it. So I said, sure, I'll go do that.
Mhm.
When I became a lumberjack, I looked at that, and at the time I was a dishwasher at one restaurant, I was a cook at another restaurant, and I was working in the meat market all at the same time.
Mhm.
And I could go to work as a lumberjack and make more money than I was making at all three of those jobs with one job.
Mhm.
I had no idea what I was getting involved in, none whatsoever. Somebody said choker setter, lumberjack. I went, sure, let's go do that.
And then
So
something opened the door to being a pastor, and then something brought you into the white-collared technology realm. Tell us about
yeah,
these transformations too.
and when I got into technology, it was about pre 1980,
Mhm.
and somebody set me at a computer terminal back then, which was a single line edit CRT screen uh, that you'd hit an A and A would show up on the screen. And previous to that, I was doing some other manual labor stuff and doing some things. And they sat me at a computer and said, "Can you do this?" Well, again, some people would say, "No, I've never been trained." Other people, "Oh, no, I'm afraid I might hurt myself or whatever." I took a moment. I hit the letter A. A showed up on the screen, and it says, "Is there a manual for this?" Yeah, it's online, and they showed me how to get to the manual online. I said, "Yeah, I can do this." That was at Atari. I left Atari 2.5 years later as a senior operations analyst over all their financial systems. And I barely got out of high school. I was a C student in high school. Because when the teacher said, "How come you didn't do your homework?" I said, "Well, I got an A on the test. Why do I need to do the homework?"
Mm.
They said, "Well, that's not the point. You still need to do homework." And my take to them was, if you can't convince me why I should do it, I'm not going to do it. I was a challenge. But so I've always looked at opportunities and trying to never say no.
Mm.
Let me check it out. Let me
Mm.
look at it. And that has developed a psyche and a psychology that now I can walk into a room, any room, and I could probably see opportunities within that structure and that environment and those people and so forth. I could probably see an opportunity that nobody else will ever see
Mm.
because I'm looking for it. I'm feeling for it. I want to feel the energy of what's going on and how these things operate. And that has led me to have a very diverse career. I've run international data centers in Japan, South Korea, London, Germany, New York, California. I've traveled to China to raise money for solar systems.
Mm.
I've traveled to India to raise money for a professional football league
Mm.
because somebody said, "You want to go to India and raise money for a professional football league?" I said, "Who's paying for the airline ticket?" They said, "We'll pay for it." I said, "Let's go."
Mm.
Tell me when you wanted me to be there. I'll be there.
Mm.
I ended up going to India for about a month. Well, I'm not a couch sitter or a hotel sitter.
Mm.
So on the weekends, I would go down to the people at the front desk and say, because I'm not going to drive in India because that's crazy.
Mm.
It's a blood
God,
sport.
how can
Uh,
I?
yeah, I probably yeah it wouldn't have been good. Uh, I would go down to the front desk and say, "Give me a car," and when the car got there, I'd say, "Take me to the nearest Christian church."
Mm.
Well, that led to me being a guest speaker at two Christian churches while I was in India, where no Anglo pastor had ever spoken before.
Mm. Were you a pastor already, or this is how it began?
That's how it began. And when I was going there, people would say, "Oh, there's Pastor Chris." I'm like, "Okay, you can call me that, but I need you to understand, I'm not really a pastor. I get that you're calling me that, but I want to make sure that I'm clear that I'm not trying to pretend to be something I'm not, right?"
Mm. Mm.
Um, but that led to a lot of different really great experiences that I would not have otherwise had if I said, "No, why would I go to India to raise money for a football league? That's
Mm.
silly. That's ridiculous." It's like, well, if you're paying my way, I know what you're talking about. I know how to do what you're talking about. So let's go do it.
Mm. As if your mind is a radar actively looking for possibilities, opportunities, and even when they're hidden behind the curtain, your mind will constantly look for them. Were you always like this, Chris?
I think so.
Mm.
Uh, when I was younger, I thought it was just my adventurous spirit. But when I look back on it and I reflect on where I'm at today, I'm always in that mode all
Mm.
the time. When I walk outside, I'm looking at what's on the sidewalk. What are the trees? Who's doing what? What's going on? Are there new and exciting things to take in while I'm out here to do these things? Um, and because I don't say no, I got involved in what's called a PPA, which is a power purchase agreement for energy.
Mm.
So early on in commercial solar, I was involved in the team that wrote some of the first commercial power purchase agreements for commercial solar in the United States.
Mm.
Not because I was a brainchild in contracts and power purchase agreements, but because I said, "Yeah, let's do this."
Mm.
Um, and a year and a half into that, there were people on the East Coast that were referring to me as the expert in power purchase agreements on the West Coast. I'm not sure if I was necessarily the expert,
mm,
but I wasn't afraid to learn,
mm,
and I wasn't afraid to look under the covers and find answers to questions that nobody else had asked.
mm,
Kind of like there's a thing in California called the California Solar Initiative. And it's kind of like the rule book
mm,
of how solar is supposed to be sold and maintained according to the California Public Utility Commission. And it's like a 300-page document that changes all the time. Well, at the time, I got hold of that document, had it all printed out, and I read it cover to cover more than once. So I highlighted it, I tabbed it, I did all these kinds of things. And I can point to numerous meetings that I would go into, and somebody would say, well, let's do this and let's do that. And I'd say, well, on page 98 it says we can't do that. Well, what
mm,
do you mean? Right here, California Solar Initiative, page 98, Article 12, Section 3. We can't do that, or we can do that. And people are like, well, how do you know that? Because I read
mm,
the manual
mm,
on what we can and can't do. And that led me to be able to start my own solar company,
mm,
where at the time there were feed-in tariffs for large-scale solar systems into the utility. The maximum size was a megawatt and a half. Well, a megawatt and a half at the time would cover about 8 or 9 acres of land,
mm,
and they would be between $3 and $5 million to build one. Well, when you try to fund something like that, it's difficult. Well, upon reading the manual and understanding things, I found out that you could build one as small as 100 kW.
mm,
I know some of these terminologies may not sit with anybody, but 100 kW took a half an acre.
mm,
And the difference is I could feed it in directly to a distribution pole, a transformer on a pole. Whereas a megawatt and a half, I had to feed it into a substation through transmission lines.
mm,
It changed the entire game. So I created a company, and in less than 6 months, we had 1,500 contracts to build 100 kW solar systems on people's land. Excuse me, based on cellular tower contracts.
mm.
So I took cellular contracts and I rewrote them to be able to say, I'm just going to lease this half acre from you.
Wow, wow. Mm.
So I guess I know I tend to ramble a little bit, but I tend to look for those opportunities.
This is extraordinary, Chris. I mean, uh, there are a number of how-tos that I'm taking away from your life, and I'm sure the audience would love this too. How to make this life work, how to make a vocation work. Even when it is challenging. When you look at, so since your journey and your work as well as a pastor, it involves meeting a lot of people in their own challenges. What do you see as some of the biggest human challenges of our time presently?
I think the biggest human challenge that we probably have is not only acceptance of one another, we're all different. We all or maybe have the same cellular makeup and those kinds of things. But fundamentally, through our experiences and our life and those kinds of things, we're all different.
Mm,
And the sooner that we can learn to accept each other for our differences, we can have a conversation. It's not about, is social media taking over? Is technology too rampant? Are is the price of oil too high? It's all those other kinds of things. Sure, those are underlying triggers. Those are underlying processes and concepts that form our lives.
mm,
But to me, it's about acceptance.
mm,
If we can't accept one another, the rest of it is irrelevant. The rest of it is just minutia that drives our psyche and drives our paychecks. But if we can't accept one another, if we can't bring ourselves to a commonality of a conversation,
mm,
even if we disagree and we don't have all the same worldviews. If we can't have a conversation like we're having right now,
mm,
we'll never get better.
mm,
We'll always be at each other's throat. We'll always be, I'm better than you, you're better than me.
mm,
I'm not better than anybody. I just am who I am.
mm,
And I accept people from who they are. Now, I'm not naive, and I'm certainly not, I'll say, milk toast,
mm,
right? I'm certainly not that guy,
mm,
but I'm willing to accept people where they're at and work with them to move along some level of commonality, even if it's just on a human level.
mm,
And if they prove me wrong or they go a different direction, that's between them and their creator, not me.
mm,
I didn't cause that. I have no influence in that. I'm not so self-important to think that I can change somebody or that I can get between them and their faith.
mm. And you feel a reluctance or difficulty in accepting each other or respecting each other or relating to each other in a fashion in which we let the other person be who they are, while I am able to hold on to who I am just at
Correct.
ease. This is something that people are struggling with these days, and therefore that does impose a challenge in their own lives.
Yeah.
Mm,
You know, it we can we can point to a lot of different challenges,
mm,
but some of those challenges are just excuses.
I get it. Mm,
They're just underlying triggers.
mm,
But we have become a community, if you will, society
mm,
that is easily set off, or to use a common term, triggered
ticked off.
for silly things.
Yeah.
Let's say I put something out on social media
Mm,
and somebody in Zimbabwe,
mm,
I'm in California, so somebody in Zimbabwe retorts to me some sort of epitaph
mm,
that is not helpful. I just ignore it. What difference does it make? I don't need to respond. I don't need to. Sometimes I'll say, that's interesting. I'm not going to instigate it. I'm not going to, because my goal is to show and provide grace.
yeah.
And that grace allows us to have a conversation no matter what. And we can grow from that conversation. Maybe we become a better community. Maybe
Yeah.
we find out we really just don't like each other. And that's fine.
Mm,
I don't have a problem with that. Somebody can say they don't like me. Eh, that's fine.
mm.
Between you, it's between you and your maker, not between me and you.
Yeah. And it's so curious and powerful, Chris, that when we are talking about how to make this life work, how to make this life successful in the face of challenges, the one thing that comes to you, and I've come to respect it even more as I'm listening to you, and it resonates deeply, is to be able to deal with others uh, with love and grace and generosity and of course not naivety, but at the same time with a little bit of open-heartedness, so that you do
Right.
say yes to them, and in that there are opportunities
Yep.
for your careers, for vocations, for business, for life itself.
For a better community, right? Because at the end of the day, isn't that what we all want?
Yeah.
Right? It's whether our vocation or cash or fortunes or whatever we're doing
Mm,
in our final hour,
mm,
isn't all that stuff irrelevant? And really what we want is somebody at our bedside that cares,
yeah.
right? And that's not always easy. But like I said, I'm not naive. If somebody comes at me with a weapon or something of those natures, right, I'm going to assess the situation and find my opportunity. But other than that, I tell people all the time, and they go, "That's crazy. Why do you say that?" I have no fear of man.
Mm,
I have a deep, unabiding respect for situations,
mm,
but I have no fear.
wow.
Now, if somebody come and they brandish a weapon, I respect the fact that they have a weapon and I don't,
mm,
but I'm not fearful
mm,
because maybe out of love and compassion, I can get them to put it down.
mm.
I don't swim with sharks anymore because I respect the fact that they will eat me, right? I'm not afraid of them. I
Mm,
just respect the fact that they're higher in the food chain when I'm in their environment.
yeah. What?
And I've been in situations internationally where I went out walking at night and those kinds of things. And I get back to the hotel and they're like, "Oh, Mr. Schuring, what are you doing? What are you doing walking around out there?" It was a nice evening. I went for a walk.
Mm,
Really,
mm,
I'm not gonna restrict my life out of other people's perceived fears.
yeah. Yeah. Life is an adventure, and in your case, it definitely has been.
Yeah, and it will be.
Uh,
I've got a lot more years ahead of me.
Absolutely. And this is what you began with this conversation as well. Uh, um, Chris, what gives you purpose? Of course, I'm getting a little favor of
Yeah,
that, but it'll be interesting
yeah.
to hear you phrase this.
Well, purpose is a sometimes a hard word to define,
Hmm.
right? Um, it could be what is your spiritual purpose, what's your personal purpose, what's your work purpose, all those other kinds of things. And it part of it, and I'm going to refer to my book, Ramblings of a Lunatic, Who Moved My Ritalin, and that's my story.
Hmm.
It's all true. That's my story. And there'll be another one I come out with volume two, but that's my story. And what I want to have is a legacy. I want to be able to have my grandchildren, and my purpose is to leave something behind for my three grandkids and their kids that maybe one they didn't have the opportunity to have,
Hmm.
or just something that is reflective of who I try to be.
Hmm.
I can't necessarily convince them of a whole lot, but hopefully through examples and time spent and those kinds of things, I can leave something behind. And so my purpose is really to, if I boiled it all down to that word in my life, it's more about when that final curtain draws, what did I leave behind?
Hmm. How did um, how did the world change because you spent some time in it, and your presence shifted something? Uh,
Right.
Already, this is a very powerful conversation, and you generated great amount of value in this, from sharing of your life, of your heart.
Thank you.
What is what is it that this life would have shifted in the people that you've touched along the way? Chris, when you
Yeah.
from the point of view of your prayer, or that I wish that the people that I touch, this is what I would hope they take away from the life that's been, that is to be.
I I would hope they would take away that we're all going to fail. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to have trials and tribulations. But let's not turn those into resentment and anger and and things that will drive us away from our humanity, both internally our humanity and externally the humanity in which we interact with. And it's really trying to make sure that that doesn't happen because again, I think it's really about that level of acceptance and the things that people would look and go, well, he may have been crazy and he may have done a lot of different things, but I had the right intention and the right heart behind 99% of the things I've done.
Mm,
Uh, and I hope they take away that it's okay to laugh sometimes at your circumstance.
mm,
I can laugh about some of the things I've been involved in because at the time they weren't funny. When I look back on them, I went, what was I thinking? Right? Well,
yeah.
I was like, seriously,
Mm,
right? So it's really finding that everything is a experience and opportunity,
Mm.
and have a good heart about it,
Yeah. Wow.
right?
Beautiful. Beautiful. How do we sum this up? Is there anything that you feel compelled to share that would complete today's conversation?
I think I would complete the conversation with have more of these conversations,
Mm.
whether it's with somebody on a podcast in a different part of the country, or whether it's your next door neighbor.
Mm.
When you leave your house or you go out of your house, put your hand out and say hi.
Mm.
And don't do it for the purposes of gain. Do it for the purposes of understanding, right? Now, we all, through our human nature, want to gain something. We all, you know, we want the best cut of pie at the restaurant and all these other kinds of things. But I think if we go through life always looking for what's in it for us, we miss a lot, right? We miss a lot.
Yeah.
And if we always look for the opportunity
Mm.
and talk about opportunity and talk about relationships and forgiveness, and we put those things into our mind and allow us to facilitate those, then I think we become better people because of it.
Wow. On that note, thanks, Chris.
Thank you very much.
This has been truly generous. Thanks for sharing yourself with us.
Well, thank you for spending your time. And I just got a message from my PhD candidate university.
Yeah.
So they want to talk to me. So I'm going to get on that call.
Yeah.
I appreciate your time. And I'm available for conversations anytime, my friend.
Thank you so much, Chris. This has been truly generous. And to everybody listening, I hope you picked up something that would help you be someone that you can truly, deeply honor in the task of life.
Thank you very much.